Hi, everyone. We are excited to be here. I haven't been here for a long time, and we are going to do a Facebook Live and an Instagram on a really important topic that affects us all. It affects us all. And it's about how do we not stop the blame game. We've done that before, but we're going to talk about how do we learn if we're playing the blame game, why it's not such a good idea, and how it actually does damage to the relationship, does damage to us, and how to change it, most importantly. So welcome Instagram, welcome Facebook, welcome YouTube. We're so glad you're here. Let us know that you see us and that we're live. That'd be great. So Diana, let's start.
Sure.
I mean, let's just be real. Blame game started back in Genesis. I just finished reading the book of Genesis. Sorry, guys, I've been sick again. I've got a bronchitis again. So I'm going to be coughing a little bit and a little hoarse, but it started in Genesis when God confronted Adam and Eve, and Adam blamed Eve. Eve blamed the serpent. And it's been the same ever since. So we know how it started. It started in human nature. It's easy to pass the buck. It's you're at fault for what I did. You're at fault for how I feel. I do that in my marriage. Do you do that in your marriage ever?
Yes, I get stuck in anger when I'm blaming him in my mind. Yeah.
So let's just be real here. This is a real channel. We don't make everything Christian polished. Everybody does everything right all the time. We all play the game. Let's all own it. We play the blame game. And what's the benefit of playing the blame game? What do you get out of playing the blame game, Diana? Because I think there's a benefit as well as a cost.
So well, I get to feel like I'm perfect, like I'm right. And I get, it almost feels like righteous indignation. You know what I mean? Like, I'm cemented in, it's not my fault. How
dare you? You're the bad guy. I'm the good guy. You're the wrong one. I'm the right one. Right. And I love that feeling.
Yeah. I get to be the victim. There's some benefits to being the victim, and there are some benefits to that. Yeah.
You did this to me.
Yeah.
Okay. So we understand that playing the blame game has a payoff. And that is that we get to stay innocent and they are 100% guilty, that we get to be right and they get to be wrong. And we get to be, the righteous one and they get to be the villain. We're the victim, they're the villain. All right. So if that's the game you want to play and if that feels good to you, you might not like what we're going to talk about today, but we're going to talk about it anyway, because God's word says that one of the most important things that he wants you to do in your life is not get married, ladies. Getting married is a wonderful thing if you are in a good marriage. It's a horrible thing if you're not in a good marriage. But getting married is not your life calling by God.
Good point.
Your life calling by God is to grow into his likeness, to be mature, to grow into godliness. And so part of that journey is to put your big girl pants on and take responsibility for your one precious life. And so when we play the blame game, what we're doing is saying, oh, I'm not responsible for how I feel, what I do, how I act, because you made me, right? Like it's the traffic's fault that I got mad, right? It's if this traffic didn't happen, if this didn't happen, I wouldn't feel the way I feel. And so it's really easy to do that, but we forfeit something. So what do we forfeit when we play the blame game? What do we lose? Because this is really important to motivate us to stay conscious of not playing this blame game.
That's a great question. What do we lose when we're consumed by blame and feeling that we're right? I'm wondering what our ladies will be saying.
What do you think, ladies? We'll give you some answers, but we'd like to hear from you. What do you think you lose when you play this game? Yeah, I'm seeing lots of comments of both feel better, Leslie, and I see that, I play this game. I play this game. So what do you think you lose by playing this game? You gain some things. You gain this feeling of superiority and self-righteousness sometimes. But what do you lose? Someone said your sanity. Yeah, you might. You lose your peace. What else do you lose? One of the things you lose, I think, that's one of the most important things for women to grasp, is that you lose your power. You lose your power to choose. You lose your power to decide because you're just the victim. And once you lose your power, You are so easily manipulated and controlled by others or by circumstances that you don't feel you have the agency, the choice to do something different, even when things are hard, that you can't get beyond the feeling of being stuck or being hurt, and you don't know how to do that. And it's everyone else's fault because they hurt you. And for women that we work with in our ministry, those are a lot of the women because their husbands are doing some bad things.
Yeah.
Your husbands, you have very good reasons to blame them for messing up your marriage. You have very good reasons for being the victim because you are victimized. But if you get stuck in chapter 1 of that story, I was hurt, you hurt me, it's your fault, I don't know how you get out of there. And so we want to empower you with some new tools. And we're also going to do a free webinar next Thursday where we're going to give you more tools on how to do just that. The webinar is called, let me just pull it up here. The webinar is called, let me just take that other banner off. I'm not good with talking and tech at the same time. And now
it won't change. Why do I keep trying? Nope, that's the next, that's the next live.
Now here's the webinar is, I'm not okay when you're not okay. How many of you feel that? Like when your husband or your daughter or your mother or your grandchild or whatever, they're not okay. And then you're not okay, either because they're blaming you or they're stressing you out. And so the workshop is going to be next Thursday, February 13th, the day before Valentine's Day. It's going to be held twice at noon Eastern and 7:30 Eastern. And we're going to unpack all of this because when you're not okay, when someone else is not okay, your first goal when you're in the blame game is to try to change them. You did this, you need to change in order for me to be okay. You hurt me, you cheated on me, I'm blaming you for how I feel, which is understandable. But then we say, in order for me to feel better, or me to heal, or me to trust again, or me to grow, you have to change. Well, how's that working for you, ladies? Now, sometimes you have a good man who does change and repent, and that's great. But in the long run, you're missing the lesson because you can't control another person. And so next week at the webinar, we're going to unpack all of that. So you have to sign up. So that's why I'm putting it up here. If you're on Instagram or you're just listening, the site is leslievornick.com/join webinar. All you have to do is put that in and it'll give you a sign up sheet. It's not on Instagram. It's not on Facebook Live. The webinar won't. It'll be on a separate webinar page where we can have a chat and we can do a question and answer afterwards. And it's just easier to work on slides and things like that with that setup. So you have to register so we can email you a link to the day when the webinar is live that you can go on. But what does it, so let's go back to our topic then. So the blame game is a thing that we use that costs us. It costs us our growth. What might we do instead, Diana?
Can I just backtrack for a minute? Because I wanted to highlight something that you said.
Yeah.
You said that if we're stuck in the blame game, we give up our power to choose and decide. I feel like it can be so subtle when we're stuck in blame because we feel a sense of control because we're in control and believing that we're right. But we're not really in touch with the fact that we're stuck in that. And we're not choosing to be different. We're not choosing to decide what to do with that. So we're kind of caught in this cycle of the same over and over again, right?
Groundhog Day.
Pardon me?
Groundhog Day.
Exactly. And it's really hard. And someone in our chat said, I know I can't control what others think, but it's hard. But I feel like you can be in that cycle for a long time and not really even know you're in that cycle of blame because it's really happening and it's true, right? Maybe what's happening to you isn't okay. And maybe he does, have some blame in this, but what we're talking about is now what? Now what do I do? How do I?
What do I do? Right.
Yeah.
Right. So go ahead, Diane.
So you asked me the question, what do you do? I think the first thing I do, Leslie, is think about what do I literally have control over and what can't I control? And then, it requires me to have some introspection and to think about my attitude, my responses, my behavior, how much energy I give to this, how much mind share I give to it, because it can really take control of your mind when you're stuck in something that you're struggling with.
Yeah. And someone put on the chat too, and we'll answer your question. So if you want to if you want to ask us a question, just put it in the feed. And if you don't feel comfortable doing that, you can do that by just going to leslievernick.com/question. And that'll give you a link to put your question in more privately if you'd like to do that. But what if someone's doing the blame game and you're the target? You're to blame for everything. So it's your fault I hit you because you didn't submit. It's your fault that I cheated because you wouldn't have sex with me 5 times a week. It's so you can see how the blame game has a payoff.
Right.
That I can rationalize my bad behavior because of what you did that disappointed me or that I didn't like. And there's reality to that. That's part of growing up. Part of growing up is that we are going to be courageously committed to reality. My friend Jim Kress, who's on Theology and Therapy with Lisa TerKeurst, says that healthy people are committed to reality at all costs. And sometimes reality is ugly. But when you're blamed or you're blaming, there's a smidgen of truth. So if you had had sex with him 5 times a week for the last 50 years, maybe he wouldn't have cheated, But can you do that? Do you want to do that? Right? Is that your job to make sure he doesn't cheat by doing everything he wants? Right? And this is where the blame game gets really tricky because there's smidgens of truth. Yeah. Had I not, had I just submitted and gone along with whatever you wanted, maybe you wouldn't have done this. But is that my role as a good wife to just do whatever you want?
Or my responsibility?
Or my responsibility? Or do I have some agency here to decide for myself what's good and right? Not just follow your marching orders of what's good and right. And so this is a tricky thing.
It's very tricky, Leslie. And I think if you're the one that's being blamed, you can be persuaded to accept and receive that blame. It can be a very confusing place to be. And so, focusing on, in addition to what can I control and what I can't control his behavior, but what is my responsibility? Is it my responsibility to meet this need every time or as much as, it's asked of me? And maybe he's insatiable and expects you to be, we talked about a doll, right? I don't know how you describe that, but yeah. Is it my responsibility to meet the demands and the needs? So I guess I point that out, Leslie, because I think a lot of times our ladies get very confused when they're being blamed and someone is speaking to them in ways that confuse them.
So let's tease that out. Let's unpack this for you ladies so that you can learn to think clearly, right? Because part of, I said, your main task as a human being is to grow up. Not just grow up physically, grow up spiritually, grow up emotionally, grow up mentally. That's your main task so that you can become fully embodied of the person that God called you to be, that you can become whole. All right. And as Christians, we're mandated to do that. And so let's say you're being blamed for something that it's your fault that I did something wrong because you wouldn't do this, right? So it's your fault that I cheated or I hit you because you weren't submissive. Let's think about that. Is it true that you disappointed him? Yes. Is it true that you should never disappoint him? No, that's not reality. That's not reality, ladies. I've been married 50 years. I can't count the number of times I've disappointed him and he's disappointed me. We haven't hit each other in those processes, right? Because I'm responsible for how I handle my disappointment. And this is the mindset shift that you have to have. And if you're going to have a good marriage, your husband has to have too, is that of course I'm going to be disappointed in my marriage. Of course I'm going to be disappointed in my spouse sometimes because no one human being can do everything I want and meet all of my needs all of the time. That's just not possible. But when you are listening to some of the Christian teaching that's out there and you have to be put on this treadmill of you have to make him happy and you have to meet his needs and you have to pump up his ego. And if he doesn't, then it's your fault and you better keep trying harder. It's a terrible place to be. Yeah. And you are more and more diminished and he is more and more not. He's not a better husband. He's more and more entitled, more and more selfish. So you're just feeding the selfish monster by playing that role. And so, yes, there might be an element of truth. And how could you respond to that? So let's say your husband says, well, it's your fault that I hit you because you wouldn't stop talking. And I told you to shut up 3 times and you didn't stop. Now, one of the lessons you need to learn is I need to shut up. Not because he told me to, but because if I don't, I'm not going to be safe. Right? Right? If someone's holding a gun to my head and I know that they're going to pull the trigger, I'm going to do what they want. But I'm not going to be friends with that person. I'm not going to sleep with them, and I'm not going to stay married to them. Right? So this is the issue that we really need to struggle with. So what do you do instead? What do you do instead? If they're blaming you for what you did that caused them to do something bad, you might say this, you might not say this to them, but you're going to have to say this to yourself.
Absolutely.
I'm not responsible for how you handle your disappointment. Yes, so you can be empathetic if you want to say this out loud. I know you're disappointed that I wouldn't shut up. I know it made you mad that I wouldn't shut up, but I didn't make you hit me. You decided that. I didn't make you lose control of you. You lost control of you. Right? And whether you can say that safely or not to him, you have to say that to yourself. But I would reverse the same thing. How many of us blame our kids? You're driving me crazy. And, we want to blame them for us losing our cookies, for us not having good self-control. But the Bible says one of the fruit of the Spirit is self-control. That's part of adulting, is that you manage stressful situations and you know how to manage them without blaming everyone else for losing your cookies.
And self-control is just that. It's to be managed by yourself. You're not responsible for his bad choices, for his behavior, even for his disappointment.
So Karen is asking, what if your partner has done some untrusting things and I complain and untrusting check up on them and then get blamed for their cheating because I pushed them there for accusing him?
Well, that's really blame shifting, isn't it? Right? I'm not going to take responsibility for my behavior. I'm just going to blame you. And again, if you would shut up, put up, and do exactly what I want and need, then I'll be okay. But that's not even possible, is it?
Yeah, and we're going to talk a lot about this in the workshop next week, and we're going to give you a workbook that you can really take some good notes with it. So we highly encourage you to sign up for the workshop to get more details on how this works in a mindset. But when you want someone to change and they won't change. So let's say your husband wants you to be the perfect wife and you're not the perfect wife, or you want him to stop lying and he won't stop lying. What do you do with that? What do you do with that? Because you have choices to make. But if you don't recognize what your choices are and how to make the wisest choice, and you're just reacting all the time, then you're probably making things worse in your marriage and in your own mental health and emotional health. And so part of, again, my goal for Christian women is to get them off some of the wrong teaching they've been taught. And even, we just had a series at our church that I, disagreed with some of the things that the pastor said. Not everything. Some of the things he said was really, really good. But some of the other things he said were still some of the traditional kind of things that you have been told your whole life. And I don't think it serves women, especially in America, in this culture. Maybe if you lived in Iran in a Muslim culture where you didn't have any rights as a woman, maybe those would be some of the same things you should do. But in this culture, I think there's something that we need to take into account. And women are image bearers of God. We still live in a patriarchal culture, and not as much as Iran or other Middle Eastern countries, but we still live in a somewhat patriarchal culture. It's changing, but it's still there, especially in the biblical world, right? Men are more than women, all those kind of things. But I don't think that's what God intended. I think God intended for us to live as equals, as co-image bearers, partners in creation. And so I think that as women, if we're just reacting to our husbands and blaming them and accusing them, we're kind of deteriorating as well as they are. And so we can be strong helpmates and easers if we can regulate our own emotions and not blame them for when we dysregulate and lose our cookies. So it's not his fault when you lost your temper, and it's not your fault when he lost his temper. And do you see, when you start taking some personal responsibility for how you manage you, what the growth could happen in your marriage instead of just blaming? So by the blame game, you lose that growth. And And when you can give up that blame game, you begin to gain some personal accountability, responsibility. And if you can do that together, your marriage can get stronger and better.
Absolutely.
Someone's asking the question right on the chat, where do I go for the workshop next week? You will go to your email and click on the link at Thursday at night, either noon Eastern time or 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. But in order for us to give you the link, you are going to have to give us your email so we can send you the link. So go to leslievernick.com/join webinar. No space in between join webinar, all one word. And that will give you a little form to fill out with your name and your email so we can send you the link next Thursday morning or Thursday evening, whichever one you sign up for. Okay.
You'll have two choices. Leslie's saying morning, but for you, those of you that are in Eastern time zone like me, it's noon.
Yeah, noon Eastern time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in Phoenix, so it's 10 o'clock my time.
Right.
I'm saying morning. Right. Yeah, so what kind of questions do you have on this blame game? Diana, you had some other things you wanted to share, so I want to give you some space to share that, but I'm going to look at the questions.
Okay, sure. I'm thinking, if he's blaming you, my response to that is to listen and validate what he's saying, not agreeing with it, but validating what you're hearing from him. And I do think that it might not, especially if he's going to escalate in behavior, you might ask gentle questions and just understand what his mindset is. It's all good information for you. And I think we need to hear the truth of where someone's at and what they're believing. Because for me, Leslie, when someone's asking me to take responsibility for their behavior and making up crazy, wild excuses for what they're doing, it's hard for me to, it's shocking. It's like hard for me to even believe it's happening. So I think one helpful thing to stepping out of denial and getting stuck in the blame game is to just ask very curious questions. So help me understand how that works.
Diana, let's role play it. I think it'd be really helpful if we role played it. So I'm going to start blaming you for something, and then you respond differently. Would that be helpful for us to actually show you how to do it? So, what's your fault that I blew up? If you would only have the house clean when I got home and have dinner ready. I come home and I'm so tired and I'm so hungry and I don't like to wait to eat. And now I'm crabby and it's all your fault that I kicked the kid's scooter out of the way because you didn't clean up. And if you would just be the kind of wife you're supposed to be, I wouldn't be acting this way.
Well, I'm really feeling your anger and I'm really wanting to.
I'm angry. It's not your fault.
Well, and I hear that you're really blaming me for your anger. I want to know what it is that you would expect when you came home that would prevent you from being angry.
I expect you're home all day. I expect a decent house. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I expect the toys out of the way. I expect things picked up. I expect my dinner to be ready within 5 minutes of when I come home, because you know how hard I work all day for our family. I do this all for you. And I come home, I'm starving. Oftentimes I've missed lunch, and to not have dinner ready for another half hour because you were busy on Facebook or you were doing what you want to do and you didn't think about me at all. I think I have every right to be enraged. That's what I need. I need you to do all that.
Well, I'm hearing that you feel like you have a right to be angry at me. But I'm really wondering what it would look like for you to manage your anger in a different way.
That's not my problem. My problem is you. You're not doing what you should do as a good wife.
We have different expectations about what a good wife is. Is it my turn to share what I'm thinking?
No, I don't care.
So what I hear you saying is that I'm going to experience your anger if I don't live up to all of the many things that you just described you want me to do.
Darn right. God says that you're to be a submissive woman and you're to do what I want and take care of our family and take care of me. You're home all day, and I expect you to do that.
You and I have very different understanding of what Scripture means. And you have a very different understanding of who I am as a woman. While I'm willing to be here to take care of the home, I am not willing to fulfill all of your demands and expectations, nor am I willing to sit here and be the brunt of your anger.
Okay, so we could go on. Mm-hmm. You see that nothing happened in terms of he got it. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm so sorry. So part of your role in understanding this is that there's a difference if you were to talk that way calmly. You're getting to see that he doesn't see you for
Right.
you, right? So Diana's getting information as she's saying these things that I'm spouting, because the Bible tells us out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. So as he's speaking, or I was speaking, what am I portraying? I'm portraying that a wife isn't really a person. You are just a robot. You're to do what I say, when I say it, how I want it, and you're not to have any feelings of your own. How dare you have feelings of your own? I'm the king of this castle. You're here to serve me. That's basically his mindset. Now, ladies, you may not like that mindset, but it's really important for you to see that he has that.
Right. And that's what I saw it. You kept coming back at me. You were giving me information again and again as I was trying to hear and listen. You were basically telling me you don't have a place here. And so that was good information for me. So I knew I didn't have anywhere else to go. He's not going to hear this. He's not going to honor me or respect me. So then I just shifted into what are my limitations using my voice. And I felt like I could do that safely with you, like you weren't going to hurt me. I wouldn't do that if I felt like I was going to get physical, if I felt like you were going to get physical.
Okay. So the next thing that we talk about, and we'll talk about this in detail in the workshop, is now what do you do? Because now you as the wife have a problem.
Yeah.
Right? You have a problem. He has a problem, right? But you can't fix his problem. You can blame him for your problem. Like, oh my gosh, I have a problem. I'm married to a man who doesn't really care about me, right? He just is using me. He doesn't really care about my feelings or my needs or my thoughts. That doesn't really matter. As long as I fulfill all of his needs and expectations, he's fine, but I don't matter. So now where do you go with that? So you have a problem. And so one of the questions that we're going to talk about in the workshop extensively is, what's my problem with his problem? So his problem is he has these expectations. What's my problem with that is I don't see myself able to fulfill them or even wanting to fulfill them.
Right.
So now what do I do? And so what do I do first to be okay that he's not okay with me? He's not okay, and now I'm not okay. Well, how can I learn to be okay, even if he's still not okay, without getting into the blame game, without sinning against him, without retaliating? You know, the Bible tells us something really powerful as we're maturing. In Romans 12, it says, do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Now, I'm not saying this man that I played was evil, but he was certainly selfish and entitled.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of you are married to men just like that. So what is the good that would overcome that kind of evil? Is it catering to the selfishness and cowering in fear and doing whatever he wants just so he doesn't get mad? Is that the godly response? Or is God calling you as his wife to take a bolder step? And so we're going to teach how to do that and how to get strong enough to do that during the workshop. But the blame game, some people really like the analogy of Groundhog Day. And if you've watched the movie, you know that the main character in the story, so picture yourself in the main character in the story, not your husband's going through Groundhog Day, but you're going through Groundhog Day.
Right.
And you're doing the same thing over and over again of cowering or complying or submitting or giving into or accommodating or acquiescing. And things aren't getting better. Selfishness is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And you're going through Groundhog Day again and again and again. What do you need to do different to break out of Groundhog Day? So that your life story moves out of that chapter into the next chapter, where there's some fresh air and some new ideas and maybe some new opportunities for him to reflect on himself as you get strong and yet still kind. Yeah, Lisa's saying we do have a choice and a voice. And I think for Christian women for a long time, we've been told that it's a noble sacrifice to give up our dreams, our desires, our thoughts, our feelings, sometimes even our health for the good of the other, right? But is that really what dying to self means? We've called it dying to self. But is that dying to self the kind of spiritual growth that Jesus was talking about? Because he talked about it as growth. He didn't talk about it as annihilation. He said when a seed goes into the ground and dies, right? What happens? Well, those of you who are gardeners, you know that it stops being a seed but it doesn't stop being. It stops being immature, and now it's going to grow into its fullest maturity. It's going to do the very thing that I told you at the beginning of this workshop. That's God's intent for us, to grow into our fullest maturity. So a watermelon can't be a watermelon until it dies to itself as a seed. An oak tree can't be an oak tree until it dies to itself as an acorn. A butterfly can't be a butterfly unless it dies to itself as a caterpillar. All right? So you're to become more of what God made you to be, not less, as you mature, as your husband is. But you can't do his work for him. Only he can. But he can't do your work either. Only you can. And so your work is to be the person that God calls you to be. And so if you're in a stressful situation or an opportunity that's really tempting to blame him for your misery because he's been a jerk, right? He's really been a jerk. And you're tempted to say, well, it is his fault that I'm, going through depression. Or it's his fault that I'm a nervous wreck. Or it's his fault that, I cheated because he was so mean to me. It's easy to do that.
Yeah.
Easy to do that. It'll keep you stuck.
Leslie, I don't know, for you ladies who have followed us for a while, Leslie drops nuggets like they're nothing. But when I listen to the things that you have said and even go back and re-listen, one nugget I'm going to pull away is the seed doesn't stop being when the seed falls to the ground and die. And I feel like there are so many ways in which when we're in these destructive dynamics that we stop being. And the question for me is, as you were saying, is what does maturity look like? That I don't want to get stuck in victimhood. And I don't want to get stuck in being prideful about being the one who's right. But in essence, what does maturity look like in taking responsibility for my life and how I move forward regardless of how the other person is or isn't responding?
Right. And that word, that's the second nugget, responsibility. So I'm so miserable, or I'm not safe, or I'm being depleted in this relationship. And I can blame him for that because he's hard to live with and he's a jerk and he doesn't treat me well and he cheats on me and lies. I mean, you can blame him if you want to. Yeah. And it's true. He is all those things. So I'm not minimizing that. But the turnaround for you in this workshop right now is how the blame game will hurt you. If that's all you do, you're still the victim. You're still stuck in the victim place. What if instead you said, wow, I'm depleted. I feel myself getting depressed. I feel scared. I don't like living like this. What am I going to do about me?
Yeah.
That's not blaming him anymore. It's recognizing I'm going down and I need to get up, and it's not his responsibility to take care of me in those ways, especially when he's shown he doesn't care to do that.
Yeah.
Right? You might say, well, he promised to love and honor, and you're right. Mm-hmm. But reality is telling you he's not going to do that. So you can blame him. You're not keeping your vows, and it might be very true. But how are you not stewarding you? Right? Ultimately, the bottom line is you're responsible for you. And if you're letting yourself languish in a relationship that's harming you or your kids, what do you need to do? How do you learn to get stronger so that doesn't happen? And that's what we want to teach you in this workshop. And that's what we teach you in every Facebook Live that we try to do. So we want to start answering some questions now.
Sure
so
thing.
We've got a few. Let me see here.
Okay.
Let me get my glasses. I thought I brought them. Yeah. When there are destructive patterns caused by one person, there is actual blame. How do I let go of blame when it's clear and still so painful? I don't want to be a doormat.
Want me to go first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I feel like we don't let go of blame. We look for the reality of what's happening to us, and we tell ourselves the truth. So in other words, we're shifting from who's responsible and whose fault is it. But if someone's treating me horribly, I'm not going to let go of that. I'm going to recognize that and then choose. And that's really what the webinar is all about. How do I choose differently? If someone else is not okay, how can I be okay in this? What are my choices?
And how do I execute them? So it's
Yes.
not just knowing my choices, but feeling empowered to actually execute those choices.
Yeah.
We really encourage you to sign up for the workshop. I don't want to be a doormat. So how do I let go of blame when it's clear and still so painful? I don't want to be a doormat. So my question to you is, what would you need to do differently to not be a doormat? Right? It's not about him changing. It's about you changing. I don't want to be a doormat. Okay, that's a great goal. So what does a doormat do? And what does a non-doormat do? What does a doormat wife do? And what have you done that makes you feel like a doormat? And what can you do differently that you wouldn't feel like a doormat? So let me give you an example. Maybe a doormat allows herself to be verbally battered again and again and again. All right. And a non-doormat woman might say, depending on how safe you are, I might just say, I can't hear very well when you're yelling at me. If you can calm down, I'd be happy to have a conversation, but I can't do it this way. That might be a non-doormat woman. Or if you're too scared to say even that, you could say, I'm sorry, but I got to go pee. Just go to the bathroom. Just go to the bathroom and get out of there. That's a non-doormat woman. You've got a strategy, right? Got to get out of there. No one's going to stop you. Oh, you can't go because you're not allowed to go pee. I mean, really, that's not going to happen. So that's all you have to do. Go to the bathroom, calm yourself down.
I love that. I'm not here for you to wipe your dirty feet on.
Yeah.
Not here to catch your mess.
Yeah. And you have to say, sometimes it's not safe to say that out loud because you're just repaying evil for evil. But you could say that in your head. You can say, you know what? I'm not here to be battered. That's not my position. God isn't asking me to put up with this.
Yeah.
And so to be able to say, I'm not called by God to be a doormat. And therefore, I'm going to move on and not be one. You're not going to change him, but you are going to change you. Diana, I'm going to give you the next question to read, and I'm going to go get a cough drop. Okay?
Okay. How do you handle trying to say it when he over talks and will not stop talking? It's like he's overcome with another personality. The question is, how do you handle it? I think I would affirm for myself that there's no amount of reasoning or words that I can give him in this moment. I might, as Leslie said, walk away. If that would escalate the situation, I might just sit quietly. And again, if he's over talking, I might continue to summarize what he's saying and just listen, telling myself that it's not my opportunity here to speak. He's not willing to hear me, and waiting for him to calm down. We always say that there's no good conversation when the temperature in the room is really high. And so if someone's really activated or really angry, it's not really the time to try to have a conversation. So the question, Leslie, is how do you handle it trying to say something when he's over talking and he won't let you talk?
Yeah, I heard a little bit about what you said, and I agree. And I think in the moment, it might not be a good time to say this, but later on, after the moment, to say, hey, I know that sometimes you get really upset and you start, talking and you have a lot to say. I can't hear you well when you talk for 45 minutes straight and I don't have an opportunity to have a conversation. I'm sort of feeling like I'm being lectured or, scolded or whatever it is that you're feeling. And I'm not willing to sit there anymore and do that. If you need some time to journal or think for yourself about what you want to say or how you want to say it in a way that we might have a conversation, I'm all ears. So you can be kind and say, I'm willing to listen, but I'm not willing to do it that way anymore. And then next time when he starts up, to say, I told you before, I'm not willing to do this anymore. So I'm going to go outside, or I'm going to go take a walk. I'm going to give you some time to cool down, and then we can talk. So I would just set some boundaries on that if you can, safely. Now, if he's going to beat you up for doing that, then you have another problem.
Yeah. I think also just thinking it through as you're talking, I might hold my hand up in the moment after he's talked for quite a while, and I might say, okay, I've listened to you. Are you wanting to hear from me?
Mm-hmm.
Just a simple question. And if he starts over talking again, that's your answer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So listen to what they say and watch what they do, because that will give you a lot of information on what your next right choice is, right? So no one has the perfect path for everything, right? Now that we have GPSs on our phone, it's easier not to get lost. But I grew up in a day where you didn't have those. And sometimes you'd get lost. You didn't know where you were, and you'd have to kind of re-anchor, like, where am I and where do I want to go? And what are the mile markers that will show me I'm there? And so sometimes when you get a few miles down the road, you say, oh, the Walmart was supposed to be here and it's not here. I must have gone the wrong way. Don't beat yourself up for that. Just turn around and go the other way, right? So you're getting information from life that's directing your steps. And God is putting that information in your way. He said, I will instruct you and guide you in the way you should go. I will counsel you with my eye upon you. And so when we see danger, understand it's time to turn around and go a different way.
Right.
My child is living a non-godly life. I shared my concerns. They are doing the same thing I did at the same age. My problem is this hurts my heart so much to watch them make the same mistakes. I understand they have a choice. Then they said I have been mean all their life. I don't believe I've been mean. How do I know if this is manipulation or blaming me? I know as a young adult, we think we are right about everything. I'm praying and asking God if I've done wrong. I think that our children do, as they're maturing, it's easy for them to blame others for their poor choices or the way that they're not growing as they should. But I think you just be open and curious, like Diana said. I think you can be able to say to your kids, I went through struggles to your age. I know you'll come out on the other side. God is bigger than, that. I trust God that, we've talked about God in your life, those kind of things. But they have their own journey to take. But I think that being mean, I would just say, can you be specific? What did I do that felt mean to you? And see what they say.
And I would add to that, in what ways are you experiencing me being mean now? Because I want to learn and I want to grow. I want to be a safe person for you. And I think that's really what we're intended to do, is compel someone through our own example and willingness to love them well, who Christ is.
Right. So we're not going to be perfect in relationships. And so when someone gives us some feedback that we're missing the mark or we're not meeting their needs, like if your husband says, oh, you're so mean, I would just say, wow, tell me what I've done that's mean. Because he might mean you didn't do everything I wanted you to do just as I wanted you to do it. So he's describing mean as you're not being a robot. All right. But he might say something that you didn't see was mean, but then as you reflect, you saw it was mean. So I think those are really important questions to invite conversation about so that we can not keep hurting each other. Maybe we didn't think something was mean and they did think it was something, if we knew about it, we wouldn't do it. All right. Where are we in terms of time? Okay.
We have time.
Yeah. How do we even respond to him when he appears to take some responsibility or acknowledge his behavior, but then at the end makes a passive-aggressive statement? Do you communicate that his passive-aggressive comment is hurtful or ignore it?
You want me to go with this?
Yeah.
You got it? Okay.
No, go ahead with it.
Well, there's so much here that I didn't even want to get to the question first, but he's taking some responsibility and acknowledging his behavior, but then taking it back. That's really interesting. I might ask if he's aware of that. Are you aware that you took responsibility and you acknowledged what you did, but then in your comment, I felt blamed or I felt harmed? I might just draw his attention to it. I don't know that I would ignore it if we're trying to get somewhere.
I might also just say right after the passive-aggressive statement, excuse me, what did you mean by that? Right? So it's inviting him to reflect on what he just said.
Yeah.
Right? And that will give you information. So if he reflects on what he said and said, that was stupid, I shouldn't have said that. Well, then that helps you to see that the first part of the conversation was really more authentic than the second part of the conversation, right? But if he says, well, if you would, whatever he says, if he gets more aggressive in the second, when you say, excuse me, what'd you mean? What'd you mean by that? Right? Well, you'll be sorry. Oh, wait a minute. What'd you mean by that? Right? I would ask for clarification in a curious little what? I don't understand what you mean by that. So that you're not letting it go, but you're not confronting it like, oh, you're just being passive aggressive now. I don't think anything you said was sincere. Don't let that mindset be in your head or say something like that out loud, because then you're just going to keep arguing. But I do think if you ask a question, a curious question, then that gives him a chance to reflect on what he said, and maybe he can own that it was stupid, or maybe he really is more aggressive than he's letting on, and he'll let you know in the next statement.
So much good can come from just bringing that to his attention. I mean, he may be really wanting to change, but it might be just a part of his behavior, and it takes time to be aware and to change your behavior if you've been in a pattern like that. And the next thing is he willing to get feedback from you? That will tell you a lot.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, the Bible says iron sharpens iron. None of us come into a relationship as perfect people. That's why the blame game is so destructive, because it's like I'm judging you. Like you're bad, I'm good. I can see. Jesus says that. Don't do that. Take the log out of your own eye before you remove the speck in someone else's. And so to give up the blame game requires you to accept reality, that you're living with an imperfect, flawed human being, and they're living with one too, right? And so we all come into a marriage with patterns of dysfunction and things that came from our family that just feel very natural. And maybe they seem like right things to do. And then we marry someone and they think that's wrong things to do. And we're just not used to that. And so someone may have learned a very passive aggressive communication style just because it wasn't okay to be direct in what they wanted to say. And by you just asking a question, like, what do you mean by that? It gives them a chance to say it again in a different way. And then however they say it again in a different way, now that they've had a chance to think about it and be conscious, will tell you, yes, this was aggressive, or this wasn't aggressive and it was stupid. He didn't mean to say it that way.
Mm-hmm.
The children and I have been at a safe house in September. He has been owning his mistakes and trying to change. What are some signs that I can look for that he has truly changed? Well, you're not specific here on what he needs to change or what you would like him to change. But I think the big question to ask him is, what does he think he needs to change? And does that align with your idea? And then the second thing is you're going to have to test that. Remember, like I just read Genesis, and so Joseph's story is really fresh in my mind. Did Joseph's brothers change? Well, he wasn't sure. He wasn't sure they changed. So he tested them. He tested them by putting the money back in their sacks. He tested them by asking them to bring back Benjamin, see if they would. Test them a couple different times. So I think the biggest way to test to see if someone's changed without knowing more information specifically from you is to say no. To say no. So he wants to come home. No, I'm not ready for you to come home. How does he handle that? He wants you to sleep with him. He's so lonely. And you say no. How does he handle that? So is your no respected? Because usually it's not. And so if he can handle your no and not like it, I'm not saying he's going to like it. Nobody likes a no, but he can handle it with respect and safety. That's one good red flag. That's the one good green flag that change is happening. I think the other green flag that we're looking for is he aware when he's fallen back into old patterns? And if he's not aware, and you make him aware, like, hey, you're scaring me, your voice is getting louder and louder, and I'm getting scared. Is he willing to listen to you and stop? Those would be some of the signs I would look for. Diana, for you? What?
I think you covered it 100%. I always look for remorse. I always look for, him really trying to understand what it's been like for you in the harm that he's created. I think that if he's interested in understanding your pain, for me, it reflects the fact that he's not just doing this to get the result, but that he really wants to be there for you and heal that hurt.
Yeah. So Paul asks an important question in the Ephesians. He says, when is a thief no longer a thief? Right? How do you know? When is a thief no longer a thief? When he stops stealing. Not just that, though. He learns to get a job and work and give to others who are in need. So we see some changes that happen, transformation of character, not just of behavior. right? So he was a thief. He had a selfish heart. What's mine is, mine, and what's yours is mine, and I don't care about you. It's only about me. That's what a thief thinks if they steal, right? So now a thief changes, not by stopping the bad behavior. That doesn't show you a thief's heart has changed. It just says his behavior has stopped stealing, maybe because he doesn't want to go to jail.
Right.
He doesn't want to, get separated if you've made an ultimatum. But when is a thief no longer a thief? When he goes to work and gives to others. Now he's got a less selfish heart. He's got a generous heart. He's got a humble heart, right? And so we want to see the progression of change and not just stopping the bad behavior, but what's the good behavior? And Diana said something really important, and that is caring for the impact he's had on you. So this is a lot of what we see in our ministry is we see husbands who say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have hit you, or I shouldn't have cheated, and I'm really sorry, and I want to come back home, or I want you to forgive me. And so you think, okay, he's gotten it. He's changed. But now we're not talking about it anymore. I'm not willing to be accountable. I'm not willing to, be, giving you some safety measures to check up on me or any of those kind of things. I'm not willing to do any of that. Just forget it now. We've been through this. I'm sorry. Why can't you just forgive it and let it go? That's a bad sign that change doesn't really happen. It's still all about me and my feelings and my needs. Even if the bad behavior, the thieving isn't happening, there's still a central, this is about me and my feelings, and you need to forgive me versus I need to help you through time and patience and support over the impact that you had. In my book, The Emotionally Destructive Relationship, I tell a story about a man who was road raging, and they got in a car accident during the road rage. And his wife broke her hip because of it. And because of that, she had permanent injuries to her hip. And every time they would ride together, she would get nervous. And he would say, do you need me to slow down? I don't feel like I'm driving too fast, but I see you're tense. Do you need me to slow down? He's caring about the impact he had psychologically and physically on her, right? He's not saying, when she says, you're driving too fast, why are you on my back all the time? Why haven't you forgiven me? He's not doing that. Mm-hmm. He's caring about the pain he caused. That shows a change of heart.
Good point.
All right. Let me think about another question. How do you begin to let go of the resentment that was built from secretly blaming him so long? It's cost you, hasn't it? It's cost you to have a bitter spirit. I think you begin to decide. That's how you begin. I'm going to let go of the resentment, right? I'm going to let go of the resentment and learn that I've built up a lot of poison in me. Mm-hmm. I've built up a boatload of poison, and it's not harming anybody but me. Any other tips to let go of it, Diana?
Yeah, I have some practical tips. I think I would do an exercise of sitting with myself, and I would start recalling all of the resentments that I'm holding against him, and I would list them all, and I would pray through them, and literally, I choose to forgive you for this. I no longer hold this against you. I invite peace to my heart, and you're confessing to God. You don't necessarily need to confess that all to him, but I think that's getting yourself right with God. And then when it comes back up for you again, reminding yourself that you gave that over to the Lord and setting your mind on, I let that go. That's God's job now. Because I think it is a process of letting go if you've held it for so long. And I do think we should be specific about what we're holding against somebody.
Mm-hmm. And there's a freedom in letting go of that poison. And I think there's a freedom in taking ownership of, hey, I don't want to live this way. Because here's Satan's tricky. He's tricky. He will hurt you and use someone to hurt you, like a spouse or a parent or whatever, church. I've seen some spiritual abuse in the feed. He will hurt you. And then you feel so entitled to the resentment that you have, right? You feel so justified. They are wrong. They did do bad. And it's easy to get stuck there. And it costs you. It costs you, just like this woman, her health. your mental health, your physical health sometimes. Like the Bible talks about resentment being like rottenness to your bones. It costs you to hang on to that. We think that we're entitled to hang on, and you can do what you want, but the Bible is really clear. It costs you to be stuck in there and to finally forgive and take responsibility for yourself. Like, I don't want to feel these feelings anymore. I don't want to be filled with hatred and bitterness anymore. I may not trust this person. I may not choose to have a relationship with them anymore because they're not changed, but I don't want to be filled with hatred and resentment because of what they did. That's only harming me.
Yeah. I actually have a list in my journal as I'm just moving through life where if I notice a resentment that I'm holding towards somebody for something that happened between us, I put it down and I take a step, I try to be intentional about letting go of that and forgiving them. Because it is subtle. Like you said, the enemy uses that against us. And sometimes we don't even know we're holding stuff. But if I'm reminded of it when I think of that person, or if I feel a certain ick, I know there's some work to do there.
Mm-hmm. There's been a lot of studies now that the heart, actually your physical heart, is more intelligent and has more receptors than your brain. And there's a site called HeartMath, which teaches a lot of that. It's getting a little woo-woo right now, but it's a lot of science that backs that the heart informs. And so I think it's really important to understand when the Bible says, guard your heart above all else, for it is the wellspring of life.
Absolutely.
The only person who can do that for you is you. And there's going to be a lot of bad people in your life who are going to seek to rob you of a good heart. And that's why that verse in Romans, do not let evil overcome you, but overcome evil with good. So the evil that wants to, like when someone hurts you, it's like shooting poison in your heart. And if you don't guard your heart, that poison starts to course through your whole being. And it fills you with resentment and bitterness and hatred. And we see a lot of this in the abuse community with women who are filled with bitterness, hatred toward their abuser. But the person who's getting damaged is them. And they don't seem to recognize that. And so when God calls us to let those things go or to move beyond them, obviously we feel them, but to move beyond them, this is for our welfare, for our well-being. Guard your heart above all else. It is the wellspring of life. So it's so great that you want to do that. Now continue to decide every day when that little twinge of bitterness comes up, hey, you're not having the best of me. Nope, that's not who I want to be. That's not who I am. I'm not a resentful person. I'm not holding on to it. I have boundaries, but I'm not going to let resentment be in charge of me. Bitterness be in charge of me.
Yeah. If someone hasn't repented of what they've done to you, it's tricky. It can be tricky. We want to remember that they're not different, but we don't want to hold bitterness against them.
Yeah. So what I'd like to do is right now is, can you put in the chat your takeaway from today? What was most meaningful to you? What is your takeaway that you feel God is saying to you? Hey, girlfriend, this is what you need to do to move beyond the blame game. This is what you need to do to take responsibility for your one precious life. Maybe it's, my takeaway is I need to sign up for that workshop because I need more information about this. Or maybe your takeaway is I need to let go of resentment, or I don't know what your takeaway is, but we would love to seal this conversation by you reflecting on for you. Sometimes we listen to all kinds of stuff on Instagram, we listen to all kinds of stuff on Facebook, and we never really learn from it because it doesn't sink into us. And so I want to take a moment and just let it sink in. For today, based on what Diana and I have said, what is it important for you to take away from? What's your action step? What's your, I need to think about this. I need to remember this. I need to journal about this. I need to pray about this. What's your takeaway from today, right? It's okay to set boundaries. My takeaway is I should have joined the live broadcast earlier. Well, you can watch the recording. It'll be out there. And we're going to do another one tomorrow on something else. So I'll say the topic for tomorrow. But yeah, take responsibility for me. What is good for me? Yeah. Get out of the blame game. Good. Love that. Tomorrow we're going to be back. I'm going to be with another coach and we are going to be talking about
He won't change. Why do I keep trying? It's you and Susan.
Me and Susan. He won't change. How many of you are married to someone who does not want to change? They're fine the way they are. You're just miserable with that, right? He won't change. So Why do I keep trying? How do I get unstuck? These are really important questions. Nobody wants to end a relationship. You married someone because you love them and you're committed. And as Christians, we promise to work really hard at making this marriage last forever. For some people, that's just not possible, especially when someone won't change. But sometimes people don't change, and you can learn to live with that. So how do you know the difference? How do you learn to understand that not everybody's going to change the way you want them to? And how do you learn to love the person they are, not the person you thought they were?
Yeah.
That's a huge difference. Yeah.
Love that.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thank you so much for being with us. We're going to have to end now because Instagram only gives us so much time. And so we are going to end. But thanks for being with us. And we will see you tomorrow, same time, noon Eastern time. And we'll be talking about he's not changing. Now, what do I do to keep this marriage going? All right. Take care. See you then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.